Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on the subject of the bill under consideration.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of H.R. 3474, the Hire More Heroes Act introduced by Representative Rodney Davis of Illinois. The Hire More Heroes Act will help ease the burden on small businesses while incentivizing them to hire veterans who have found themselves out of work as they return home from overseas. President Obama has repeatedly said, if you've got good ideas, bring them to me. Let's go. Well, Mr. President, here is a really good idea. So let's go. Our veterans have sacrificed for our country, and as they return home, they deserve opportunities and they deserve a job. One thing I routinely hear from my communities back home is that entrepreneurs want to invest in America and they want to grow their businesses. Well, here's an opportunity to do both. Too often we use the term that something is a win-win. Well, I can think of no better term. This is a win-win. This is a win for businesses who need workers with outstanding skills and ethics, and a win for veterans who just want a job. The Hire More Heroes Act allows businesses that hire a veteran enrolled in TRICARE or through the VA to not count that veteran toward the 50 employee threshold for triggering the ACA employee mandate. The 50 employee threshold has been a big disincentive for small businesses to grow. And if they have more than 50 workers, they fall under that mandate and their costs go up. So firms with 45, 46, 47 workers are very reluctant to grow any bigger. But if they hire a veteran under this legislation, that won't count for purposes of determining they have enough workers to trigger the mandate. If that isn't an incentive to hire more veterans, I don't know what is. And these are veterans who already have health care. They just want and deserve a job. I urge my colleagues to support this common sense bill, and at this time I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Texas reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Michigan is recognized.
Thank you. I yield myself such time as I shall consume. This bill, as has been discussed, encourages veteran employment and the growth of mid-sized businesses. For post 9/11 veterans, the unemployment rate has continued to decline. However, the rate of unemployment is still higher than the national average. For February 2014, the unemployment rate for veterans from this period was 9.2% higher than the national average of 5.3%. I am so happy that the Republicans at this moment are trying to help the ACA work for veterans, for businesses, and for all Americans. I hope we'll join in supporting this bill, and I reserve the balance of our time.
The gentleman from Michigan reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Speaker, at this time I'm proud to recognize the author of this bill, whose family is a small business owning family, whose bill came from his own Veterans Advisory Committee. I'd like to yield up to 5 minutes to the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Davis.
Gentleman from Illinois is recognized for 5 minutes.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague from the great state of Texas for being here tonight to talk about this important piece of legislation, bipartisan piece of legislation. The Hire More Heroes Act is a jobs bill. It's a jobs bill that will not only encourage the hiring of veterans, but also one that will allow businesses to expand and grow our economy without being penalized. H.R. 3474 would exempt veterans who have health insurance through the VA or the DOD from being counted toward the 50 employee limit under Obamacare's employer mandate. Today, an estimated 8.9 million veterans receive health coverage through the VA, yet they will still be counted as an employee in need of health coverage under the employer mandate. This is a common sense bill simply saying that a veteran who already has coverage through TRICARE or the VA cannot be counted twice. You are either someone in need of health insurance or you are not. I introduced the Hire More Heroes Act last year in response to an issue raised at one of my Veterans Advisory Board meetings by Brad Leviti, the superintendent of the Madison County Veterans Assistance Commission. That commission does great work by providing services to approximately 35,000 veterans in southwestern Illinois, including helping those veterans find employment. Although veterans returning from combat have 5 years to sign up for TRICARE, they are returning to an economy full of hiring freezes, layoffs, and unemployment rates above 9%. The unemployment rate for post-9/11 veterans jumped from 7.9% in January to 9.2% in February. Our veterans deserve more. We know that our military members receive some of the best training in the world, and we should do everything we can to encourage businesses to take advantage of those skills by hiring those veterans. A recently released study by the National Small Business Association found that 91% of small businesses saw increases in their health care costs, and 2/3 of their members said it was a reason they have held off new hiring of employees. It's not a secret that we need to address the true drivers of our skyrocketing health care costs. Families see this every day when they pay their monthly premiums or get a medical bill in the mail. But placing more and more unnecessary regulations on our small businesses does nothing to address this and only exasperates the problem by forcing businesses to make up for these costs by cutting hours or preventing pay increases. Forcing employers to offer health insurance is a much more complicated issue than I think some in Washington thought it was going to be. And with the administration delaying the employer mandate yet again, I think we need to start seriously looking at the issues surrounding the employer mandate, and it starts today with passing H.R. 3474, the Hire More Heroes Act, and the other health care reform bills on the floor today. I want to thank Brad Leviti again and all of the workers and volunteers at the Madison County Veterans Assistance Commission for their assistance they provide to veterans, and encourage my colleagues to vote for this common sense bill to help veterans find work and assist small businesses in hiring qualified, well-trained employees while providing much-needed relief from Obamacare. And I also, Mr. Speaker, want to thank the co-sponsors, the bipartisan co-sponsors of this common sense piece of legislation, especially a couple today that are with us on the floor. My good friend from Hawaii, veteran herself, Tulsi Gabbard, and my good friend from Kentucky, Andy Barr. So, Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields the balance of his time back to the gentleman from Texas. The gentleman from Michigan is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a special privilege to yield as much time as she shall consume to a veteran who I think is going to relate her own experience, the Congresswoman from Hawaii, Ms. Gabbard.
Gentlelady from Hawaii is recognized for such time as she may consume.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'm rising today in strong support of the Hire More Heroes Act introduced by my friend Rodney Davis from Illinois. You know, when he first came to me with this idea, it was a no-brainer that I would want to support this effort because of the key constituencies that it serves. I think that everyone would agree that the intent or the goal of the Affordable Care Act is to make sure that all people have access to affordable health care. That's a large piece of legislation. It needs some work, it needs some fixing, and this legislation seeks to do that. First of all, the Affordable Care Act requires employers with 50 or more full-time employees to provide health insurance or to pay a per-employee fine. This measure does a very important thing that would encourage these small business owners to do two things: to grow as well as to hire more veterans by exempting those who receive insurance either from the VA or those reservists, like I was covered under TRICARE for a long period of time after my deployment. It would make it so these employers would not have to count these veterans towards that 50 total. Secondly, this bill serves veterans. We're facing an unfortunate and unacceptable huge number of unemployed veterans, many people who are young and who are capable and coming back from conflicts overseas. And these are veterans who will serve as a huge asset to businesses of any size because they come with a unique amount of training. They are highly disciplined. They know what it means to work as a member of a team. They know what it means to put the mission first, and they are servant leaders at their very best. This bill provides an incentive for businesses to hire veterans. This is a common sense improvement to the Affordable Care Act that will benefit both of these important groups. I urge my colleagues to support H.R. 3474 and yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlelady yields back the balance of her time. The gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to yield 1 minute to another champion for veterans, the gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Barr.
Gentleman from Kentucky is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the gentleman from Texas, and I rise in support today of the Hire More Heroes Act, sponsored by my friend and colleague from Illinois, Congressman Rodney Davis. I applaud the work of Congressman Davis in championing this cause, and I also would like to compliment my friend and colleague from the great state of Hawaii for her service to her country and also for her bipartisan cooperation on this important piece of legislation. Unfortunately, too many veterans cannot find work these days as a result of flawed Washington policies like Obamacare that are hindering job creation. This legislation will give those who have selflessly served our country more employment opportunities by providing American small businesses with the ability to hire more veterans. Although this administration has delayed the employer mandate, many small businesses in my district in central and eastern Kentucky have expressed deep concern that Obamacare would discourage them from hiring more workers. I want to thank again Congressman Davis for introducing this common sense legislation that will help our veterans find work without punishing small businesses for hiring these qualified and well-trained employees. I urge my colleagues to vote in favor of H.R. 3474, the Hire More Heroes Act. And I yield back the balance of my time.
Time of the gentleman has expired. The gentleman from Michigan.
You ready to close?
Yes, sir.
I'll be very brief because I think the bill speaks for itself, and those who have spoken on its behalf have spoke so eloquently on behalf especially of the veterans of this country. So I now yield the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
As we close, I'd like to yield 30 seconds to the author of this bill, Mr. Davis of Illinois.
The gentleman from Illinois is recognized for 30 seconds.
Thank you to my colleague from Texas for your support on this bill and for managing it here on the floor tonight. It shows today that bipartisanship does happen in the U.S. House of Representatives. This is a common sense bill supported by Republicans and Democrats alike. This is something that comes up from the grassroots in Madison County, Illinois, and now has a chance to become law. I'm humbled by the support that we've seen for this piece of legislation, and I again, urge my colleagues to support the Hire More Heroes Act. I yield back.
Mr. Speaker, I yield back.